ready? Y'all got it? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 6:20 p.m. on Friday, August the 6th, 1993. I would like to read a statement into the record. We are in the East Iberville Elementary School, 3285 Highway 75, St. Gabriel, Iberville Parish, Louisiana. My name is Catherine Liuza, and I am the acting program manager for the permit section of the Hazardous Waste Division. I would like to welcome each of you here this evening. I will be the hearing officer for the public hearing regarding the draft hazardous waste permit and the draft air quality permit for Supplemental Fuels Incorporated, planned to be located at Highway 141 on Point Claire, St. Gabriel, Iberville Parish, Louisiana. We are here to receive comments on the draft operating permits for the air and hazardous waste, which will become part of the administrative record. Because of the number of persons wishing to offer comments on the draft permits, each person's comments will be limited to 10 minutes. When all the persons who have registered to comment have spoken, I will then allow any person who needs more time to return to the podium to offer additional comments. I want to emphasize that we will only be receiving comments. We cannot answer questions or respond tonight. This public hearing will continue until the comments become redundant. At that point, I will close the hearing. The public comment period for the draft permits was originally scheduled to close at 4:30 p.m. on Monday, August the 9th, 1993. The comment period for both permits has been extended and will close at 4:30 p.m. on Friday, August the 20th, 1993. We will receive written comments until that time. Instructions on how to submit the comments are included in the fact sheet, copies of which are located at the receptionist's desk at the door. The proposed operating permits are being issued by the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. With me here tonight are staff members from the Hazardous Waste Division Permit Section, the Air Quality Division Permit Section, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and Ms. Peggy Morvant from Acadiana Reporting Service, who will be recording and transcribing this hearing. At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. William Gallagher of the United States Environmental Protection Agency and give him an opportunity to speak. Certainly.
Thank you, Catherine. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad that everyone could be here, and I appreciate everyone's extra effort to get out on your time and tell us what you believe needs to be heard by us. As Catherine said, my name is Bill Gallagher. I'm chief of the Arkansas, Louisiana Hazardous Waste Permit Section for EPA Region 6 in Dallas. First, I'd like to begin by explaining a little bit the division of regulatory authority for the federal hazardous waste law. It can be confusing, as you probably have figured out, so I'd like to take a moment to discuss it. The federal law which requires permits for hazardous waste management facilities is the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, RCRA, or RCRA. That is the base part of the hazardous waste program, the main part. The state of Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality has been authorized by EPA to run their hazardous waste program in lieu of the federal program for the base part of the program. In 1984, Congress passed some amendments to RCRA, which they called the Hazardous and Solid Waste Act of 1984. We use the acronym HSWA, HSWA, to refer to that part of the requirements. Those provisions have not yet been delegated to the state of Louisiana. Therefore, EPA will be enforcing those regulations until the state is authorized. These provisions are contained in Section 7 of the draft permit for the Supplemental Fuels Hazardous Waste Facility. The draft permit for SFI is a result of the joint effort between the state and EPA. DEQ has developed the majority of the permit. The state and EPA developed Section 7, which contains provisions to satisfy the 1984 HISWA amendments to RCRA. If issued, this portion of the permit, Section 7, will be finalized, signed, and enforced by EPA until the state is authorized to run that portion of the program. I'd like to briefly outline the major provisions of the HISWA portion of the draft permit. Section 7 contains conditions which require SFI to develop and implement a waste minimization program. It contains prohibitions against the use of hazardous waste as a dust suppressant. It contains restrictions on land disposing of hazardous waste on-site or off-site unless they meet stringent treatment standards. This section also requires investigation and cleanup of any contamination from past practices at the facility. These areas of past or present contamination are referred to as solid waste management units. At the SFI facility, no contamination has been identified to date. The permit requires FSI, however, to notify EPA of any newly discovered solid waste management units, to investigate them for releases, and to clean up the releases. Comments we have received to date raise a number of questions which we will investigate and are in the process of investigating prior to making a decision on the permit. We're sincerely interested in your comments so that we can take your concerns and any information you have regarding those concerns into consideration before we make any decision on the permit. That's all I have at this point, so Catherine, I'll turn it back over to you, wherever you are. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. The permits have been administratively and technically reviewed by the hazardous waste staff, the air quality staff, and the United States Environmental Protection Agency staff. A public notice regarding the availability of the draft permits for Supplemental Fuels Incorporated was published in the Advocate, which is the state's official journal, on Monday, June 21st, 1993. The White Castle Times on Wednesday, June 23rd, 1993. The Plaquemine Post South on Thursday, June 24th, 1993, and the Gonzales Weekly on Thursday, June 24th, 1993. The department has extended the comment period until 4:30 p.m. Friday, August the 20th, 1993. The notice extending the comment period was published in the August 6, 1993 edition of The Advocate and the August 5th, 1993 edition of the Plaquemine Post South. The public notice will also be published in the August 11th, 1993 edition of the White Castle Times and the August 12th, 1993 edition of the Gonzales Weekly. The draft hazardous waste permit has been available for public review at the Ascension Parish Library, the Gonzales Branch, 708 South Irma Boulevard, Gonzales, Louisiana, the Iberville Parish Library, East Iberville Branch, 5715 Monticello Street, St. Gabriel, Louisiana, the Iberville Parish Library, 24605 J. Gerald Barrett Boulevard, Plaquemine, Louisiana, the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality Hazardous Waste Division office located on the 5th floor of the H.B. Garlick Building, 7290 Bluebonnet Boulevard, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is open to the public Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. and from 1:30 p.m. until 4 p.m. except for holidays. And at the United States Environmental Protection Agency, Region 6, RCRA Permits Branch, 1415 Ross Avenue, Suite 1200, Dallas, Texas. The draft air quality permit has been available for public review at the East Iberville Branch Library, 5715 Monticello Street, St. Gabriel, Louisiana, and at the LDEQ Air Quality Division Permit Section located on the second floor of the H.B. Garlock Building, 7290 Bluebonnet Boulevard, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. At the close of the public comment period, the permit staff will prepare a responsiveness summary that will respond to all significant comments received on the draft permits. I urge you to address your comments to the specific technical aspects of the draft permits. Those are the only comments that the staff can consider and provide responses to in the responsiveness summary. The responsiveness summary will be an attachment to the final decision and will be available for review at the Ascension Parish Library, Gonzales Branch, the Iberville Parish Library, East Iberville Branch in St. Gabriel, the Iberville Parish Library in Plaquemine, the LDEQ office located on Bluebonnet Boulevard in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and at the US EPA Region 6 RCRA Permits Branch in Dallas, Texas. All persons who submit written comments or request a notice for the final permit decision will be notified once the permit decision has been issued. I appreciate your attendance here this evening and the interest that has been expressed in the draft permits thus far. I now open the meeting for any comments that you might like to state for the record. I would remind you that the hearing is being recorded and that an official transcript will be prepared and made available at LDEQ for your review once it is completed. I will now accept comments from persons who registered with the receptionist at the desk. I would like to ask Dr. Marcy Hardy to please present her comments.
I'm fine, thanks. I am Dr. Marcia Hardy. I am a doctor of veterinary medicine and I have a PhD in toxicology. My field is industrial toxicology and I work in the health and environment area. A few weeks ago, I was at the World Health Organization headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, where I participated on a task force writing an environmental health criteria document for the World Health Organization. My home is approximately 1,200 feet from the proposed SFI facility. I'm deeply concerned about this. Obviously, nobody wants to live next door to a hazardous waste facility, but my concerns go much deeper than not in my backyard sentiments. The proposed site is clearly and irrefutably inappropriate. Because the site is inappropriate and because of the operator's own acknowledged inexperience with hazardous waste, I have grave concerns about whether the proposed facility could ever be built and operated in a safe and environmentally sound manner. I am not alone in my concerns about SFI. I am not alone in my opposition to SFI. The list of those opposing SFI is long and it's growing daily. Never before has there been such widespread and diverse opposition. This opposition is making history. Never before have 2, let alone potentially 3, local governmental bodies opposed a facility like SFI. Never before has the Louisiana House of Representatives passed a resolution opposing such a facility. The opposition list includes ordinary citizens in 3 separate parishes, Iberville, Ascension, and East Baton Rouge. It includes organizations and associations that cut across all different groups. It includes local parish and state elected officials. The Iberville Parish Police Jury and the Ascension Parish Police Jury have passed resolutions opposing SFI. 10 of 12 members of the East Baton Rouge Metro Council have signed statements opposing SFI, and they have heard about the proposal so late that they haven't been able to put it on their agenda. We're hoping that the East Baton Rouge Council will also pass a resolution opposing SFI. This opposition list is so historic that I'm going to read it into the record. The Iberville Parish Police Jury, the Ascension Parish Police Jury, State Representative Quasar, the Louisiana House of Representatives, State Senator Tom Green, State Representative McCain, State Representative Russo, Iberville Parish Sheriff Petrie, Ascension Parish Sheriff Tridico, of Iberville Parish Clerk of Court DuPont, Iberville Parish School Board members Bickham, Edwards, Guidry, LaPlace, Shakespeare, Yarborough, St. Gabriel Constable Kinchin, Plaquemine Selectman Jackson, Jefferson, Reeves, Plaquemine Justice of Peace Banta, Aber, and Smith, Plaquemine City Kirk, Horn, the Gonzales Mayor Berthelot, Gonzales Board of Aldermen, Sunshine Justice of Peace Grace Jr., White Castle Mayor Gariso, White Castle Chief of Police Gariso, Grosetet Mayor Cerullo, Grosetet Alderman Hill and Shafi, Rosedale Alderman Bush Gannett, Rosedale Police Chief Sparks, Rosedale Constable Graffia, Maringouin Alderman Kalura, Maringouin Justice of Peace Lockman, Iberville Parish Sales and Tax Matrine, White Castle Alderman DeSales, White Castle Constable Kimber, the Bayou Paul Civic Association, the East Ascension Sportsman's League, the Baton Rouge Sportsman's League, Shadowwood Aviary and Preserves, Bluff Swamp Wildlife Refuge and Botanical Gardens, Great River Road Plantation Parade Association, Neighbors Assisting Neighbors, Louisiana Coalition for Tax Justice, Louisiana Environmental Action Network, East Iberville Aware, Save Ourselves, Louisiana Citizens Action, Ascension Parish Residents Against Toxic Pollution, Oil and Chemical, Atomic Workers Local, the Gulf Coast Tenants Association, and Patrons Federation of the National Hansen Disease Center. Why do so many people and organizations oppose SFI's plans? Because SFI intends to place an inherently dangerous operation in a clearly inappropriate location. Because SFI's operation would fuel a hazardous waste disposal method that is so controversial, EPA's Administrator Carol Browner declared an 18-month moratorium on new permits for cement kilns, because the anticipated EPA crackdown on cement kilns will likely dry up the market for SFI's hazardous waste fuel, because SFI's hazardous waste management plan will benefit no one but themselves. SFI's proposed location fulfills the state's definition of an environmentally sensitive area and one that would pose undue health risk for human exposure. It is an environmentally sensitive area because it contains a wetlands or is in proximity to a wetlands. It is environmentally sensitive because it is in proximity to a wildlife preserve or management area. The area contains an aquifer recharge zone. The proposed facility would pose undue health risk because of proximity to nearby residences and residential areas. It would pose undue health risk because of the proximity to hospitals and prison facilities. It would pose undue health risk because could aggravate chronic health problems in the community. It would pose undue health risk because of the number and density of existing industrial facilities already discharging hazardous materials into the air and water. It would finally propose undue health risk because of the inability to evacuate nearby residences and those in hospitals and prisons in the event of an emergency. The facility would also put an undue burden on the local governmental infrastructure from the standpoint of police and fire services and would likely impede economic development in the area. Who wants to have a business next to a hazardous waste facility? These and other findings were detailed in the Iberville Parish Police Jury Report to Secretary Kai Midbo. I remind Secretary Kai Midbo that state law expressly states that the Secretary can deny a permit based on these findings. The citizens and elected officials expect Mr. Midbo to heed this law and to deny this permit. I am very distressed that I find it necessary to remind the Secretary of DEQ about the contents of state environmental regulations. But based on my experience with DEQ in relation to SFI, I have little faith that DEQ is cognizant of its own rules and regulations. DEQ did not properly inform the citizens of Louisiana of the receipt of SFI's permit application. And because they did not properly inform us, we were deprived of 8 months in our fight against SFI. They did not even properly inform the Iberville Parish Police Jury of SFI's permit application. The police jury learned of SFI from the citizens, and in fact had passed a resolution opposing SFI before DEQ wrote a letter informing them of SFI's permit application. The department continues to make faulty decisions. As late as last week, Mr. Glenn Miller, Assistant Secretary of DEQ, wrote that a final decision on the SFI permit must be given by August 13th because of the 410-day rule. SFI's permit application clearly does not fall under this rule, and therefore a headlong rush into a final decision is not required. I understand that Secretary Mr. Midbow, Assistant Secretary Glenn Miller, and the manager of the Hazardous Waste Division, Mr. Harold Etheridge, have turned down a request of the Iberville Parish Police Jury to attend this meeting and listen to the citizens' concerns firsthand. Apparently, they were too busy to be here. The Environmental Protection Agency, on the other hand, has listened to the concerns of the citizens of Louisiana. They have traveled here from Dallas, Texas to be here and listen to what we have to say firsthand. Unfortunately, Mr. Midbow couldn't drive from Baton Rouge to be here. Ms. Leuza, who is acting head of permits, or excuse me, she's an acting permits manager at DEQ, is here to head up this meeting. Ms. Leuza, I do not believe that the citizens' concerns about SFI are being adequately expressed to the upper management at DEQ. I do not believe upper management understands that the opposition is much bigger than not in my backyard. I hold you, as tonight's hearing officer, personally responsible for seeing that my comments tonight are relayed to Mr. Midbow. Mr. Midbow is responsible for fulfilling DEQ's mission of protecting the health and environment of Louisiana. He is responsible for looking past the technical completeness of the application to achieve the protection of health and environment. In order to fulfill DEQ's mission, he will have no other choice but to deny SFI's permit application. He will be abdicating his responsibility if he does anything else. Thank you.
Before I call the next speaker, I want to remind all the speakers that they have 10 minutes to give their comments. Ms. Hardy's comments were within those 10 minutes, but with the clapping and the interruptions, that's taking up time that the speaker is given. So I just want to remind you, that you have 10 minutes to give it, and then after that time period, after each person is given an opportunity to speak, then you can get up for as long as you wish and speak. Now I'm going to call the next speaker, Mr. Rodney Gascon.
My name is Rodney Gascon, and I live in Plaquemine. At the present time, I own and operate a business, and like many other businessmen, I'm struggling to keep my head above water financially. Many of my customers are also facing difficult times, which means my services are utilized less each time they see a loss in profits. I've seen many of my friends and neighbors laid off from area plants and are without any prospect of finding a job anytime soon. Iberville Parish has one of the highest unemployment rates in the nation. I believe the last figures I saw were above 10%. That's a lot of people out of work. I'm not aware of any current major construction projects in Iberville Parish. Our craftsmen are going out of this area to work. Some are even forced to go out of state to work turnarounds and construction jobs whenever they can find them. A contractor's equipment yard in Plaquemine is full of their equipment, all idle. This equipment is usually rented and on the job. Concrete trucks, dirt trucks, and other transportation companies are at a virtual standstill. Given the sad state of affairs that our local economy is in, I believe that a project such as SFI is proposing would be helpful to our business, to the business that are presently in such sad shape.
I will remind the audience, and this will be my only reminder, any outburst, and I've stopped the clock for your timing, any outburst from the audience while someone is trying to give their 10 minutes of public speaking time, and I will clear the hearing room and I will sequester the hearing. And one person at a time will be brought into this room to give their comments to DEQ. Now it's up to you, gentlemen and ladies. When someone is speaking, you will not interrupt them. They have the right to give their comments, whether they are for the facility or against the facility. The next outburst, and I say this in all sincerity, we will clear the room other than the DEQ employees, and we will bring each of you in one at a time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now, sir, continue your talk.
According to a study done by LSU economics professor Dr. Lauren Scott, SFI will spend about $11.5 million to build this facility. Dr. Scott believes this money will roll over several times, resulting in over $25 million in sales with local firms and businesses. I hope I can get a little bit of that business because I need it. That's the business picture. Now to bring the economics down to the individual level. Dr. Scott also said that nearly 400 jobs will be supported by the construction of SFI, with over $8 million in earnings by Louisiana workers. SFI's dollars will roll over many times. The taxing bodies will get a piece of this action also. Dr. Scott estimates that over $500,000 will ultimately go to the state, parish, and city taxing bodies as a result of the construction of this facility. These figures are for the construction phase only. SFI estimates that 40 to 50 permanent jobs will be created at their plant, many of which will go to East Iberville and other Iberville Parish residents. Dr. Scott says that over 500 new jobs will be created as a result of serving SFI. These jobs would be in transportation, packaging, equipment rental, service groups, and I hope my business as a graphic designer as well. In summary, I think SFI will ultimately be good for Louisiana's environment and ultimately be good for Louisiana's business climate.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. John Johnson.
How do we do that? Let's see. My name is John Johnston. I'm with the Louisiana Geological Survey of the Department of Natural Resources. I was requested to come here by my supervisor, Bill Marcellus, the Director and State Geologist, to read two letters that the Geological Survey prepared concerning this permit. The letters were written on July 9th and August 4th to Mr. Frank Bonifay, Bluff Swamp Wildlife Refuge and Botanical Gardens Incorporated. I'm going to read the text of the two of them. They were prepared by Mr. Bradford Hanson, who is the head of our Water Resources section. He is unavailable tonight. I'm his supervisor. I'm filling in. The letters are partially repetitious, so forgive me if I repeat something. Okay, first letter, July 9th, 1993, Bluff Swamp Wildlife Refuge and Botanical Gardens Incorporated, Mr. Frank Bonifay, P.O. Box 1281, Prairieville, Louisiana, 70769. Dear Frank, we have examined the surface topography as it relates to the runoff issue and the interaction between the surface water and shallow aquifers in the vicinity of the proposed SFI facility at Point Claire as per requested. The following observations are the result of examining U.S. Geological Survey topographic maps and limited field examination. Runoff from the proposed SFI facility flows away from the direction of the levee into a drainage ditch locally referred to as Community Bayou. Community Bayou flows approximately northeast from its headwaters located close to the National Leprosarium in a wetlands area, passes behind the proposed SFI site, beneath LA State Highway 75 on the outskirts of the small rural community of St. Gabriel, and into Bayou Bro. Bayou Bro continues its northward flow towards the Spanish Lake Bluff Swamp area with numerous other drainage ditches in bayou such as Bayou Paul providing additional runoff. Bayou Bro appears to intersect Alligator Bayou near the Iberville Ascension Parish line and flows as one through Bluff Swamp and eventually intersecting Bayou Manchac at the flood control structures. It appears that water from Alligator Bayou does not normally commingle with Bayou Manchac water except during periods of flooding in Iberville and Ascension parishes when the flood control gates are open to allow water to flow into Bayou Manchac. Bayou Fountain normally flows southeastward along the edge of the terrace from about near College Town to the Country Club of Baton Rouge area and eventually into Bayou Manchac near the flood control structures discussed earlier. During periods of high water in the Amite River, water backs up into Bayou Manchac and Bayou Fountain, reversing the normal flow. During such flooding events, the flood control gates are also opened, which may exacerbate the problems along Bayou Fountain. The prospect of surface water contamination from SFI reaching Bayou Fountain in South Baton Rouge is probably pretty slim, judging from the route it would have to take and the other criteria it would have to meet, that would have to be in place to get it there. While anything may be possible, the immediate area to be impacted by such an event would be the neighbors in the vicinity of SFI and the small community of St. Gabriel through which Community Bayou flows. The next impacted area of concern would be the Spanish Lakes Bluff Swamp region because of its flora and fauna. Another area of concern would be the shallow aquifers in the vicinity of the SFI site. Surface water and shallow aquifers commingle. What this means is that during periods of drought, creeks and bayous that continue to flow do so because groundwater seeps into the creek bed. Just the converse occurs when rivers and bayous are full of water. Surface water percolates through the surface materials and recharges the shallow aquifers. Depending upon the site geology, surface recharge to aquifers, both shallow and deep, can be substantial. The proposed SFI site is located on the inside of a meander curve. These areas are characterized by coarser grain materials such as sand. Sand is much more permeable than clay and therefore allows fluids to flow through it more easily. The site geology beneath the proposed SFI facility would be a critical issue in view of the nature of the proposed activities. The LGS does not have site-specific information regarding the geology in the aquifers. A detailed soil boring program would be required before these types of issues can be resolved. I hope this information will be of benefit to you. As always, when the LGS takes on a request such as this, we do so as a disinterested third party. We do not take sides. Our conclusions are based on the best available science available at the time. Our conclusions may change as the scientific inputs are refined and the database increased. If we can be of further assistance, please feel free to contact us. The second letter is dated August 4th, 1993. Again, it's to Bluff Swamp Wildlife Refuge and Botanical Gardens, Inc., Mr. Frank Bonifay, P.O. Box 1281, Prairieville, Louisiana, 70769. Dear Frank, we examined the runoff and surface water shallow aquifer interface issues in the vicinity of the proposed SFI facility at Point Claire as per requested and prepared a short letter discussing our findings, which was sent to you on July 9, 1993. The purpose of this letter is to reiterate our conclusions. Our observations were the result of examining U.S. geological topographic maps and conducting limited field examination. Runoff from the proposed facility flows away from the direction of the levee and into a drainage ditch towards the rear of the property locally referred to as Community Bayou. Community Bayou flows approximately northeast from the proposed facility beneath LA State Highway 75 near the small rural community of St. Gabriel and into Bayou Bro. Bayou Bro continues its northward flow towards the Spanish Lake Bluff Swamp area with numerous other drainage ditches in bayou such as Bayou Paul providing additional runoff. Bayou Bro appears to intersect Alligator Bayou near the Iberville Ascension Parish line and flows as one through the Bluff Swamp and eventually intersecting Bayou Manchac at the flood control structures. It appears that surface water from Alligator Bayou does not normally commingle with Bayou Manchac water except during periods of flooding in Iberville and Ascension parishes when the flood control gates are open to allow water to flow into Bayou Manchac. However, groundwater is not impeded by the control structure. Surface water contamination would have an immediate impact on the area's neighbors, residents living near the proposed facility, ranchers whose livestock drink from the bayou, and the residents of St. Gabriel through which Community Bayou flows. The next impacted area at risk would be the Spanish Lakes Bluff Swamp region and its unique flora and fauna. Water contaminated with hazardous waste flowing through the Bluff Swamp Spanish Lakes area would probably have a devastating effect on the plant and animal life of this wetland. Moreover, during high water conditions when backflooding is occurring to connecting drainage systems such as Bayou Paul, contaminated backflow could impact residents living well beyond the immediate vicinity of the contaminant source. Another area of concern are the shallow freshwater aquifers in the vicinity of the site. Surface water commingles with the water in shallow aquifers. What this means is that surface water percolates through the surface materials and recharges the shallow aquifers. Depending upon the site geology, surface recharge to aquifers, both shallow and deep, can be substantial. The proposed site is located on the inside of a meander curve, an area characterized by coarser grain materials such as sand. Sand is much more permeable than clay and therefore allows fluids to flow through it more easily. The site geology beneath the proposed facility should be a critical issue in view of the nature of the proposed activities. The LGS does not have site-specific information regarding the geology in the aquifers. A detailed soil boring program would be required before these types of issues can be resolved. Should groundwater contamination occur and go unnoticed, the nature of the Gonzales Aquifer is such that its impact could reach well beyond the nearby community of St. Gabriel and affect citizens of neighboring parishes on both sides of the Mississippi River. One further observation worth noting. There is an abandoned tank on the property that is being purchased by SFI. We do not have any information regarding what was stored in this abandoned tank or whether the tank has integrity. This information should be available from DEQ. I hope this information will be available to you. As always, when the LGS takes on a request such as this, we do so as a disinterested third party. We do not take sides. Our conclusions are based on the best available science available at the time. Our conclusions may change as the scientific inputs are refined and the database increased. If we can be of further assistance, please feel to contact us. Thank you.
All right, the next speaker is Representative Roy Crozier, Jr.
Good evening. I cannot say that it is a pleasure to be here on such an occasion when we must give a show of force and commitment and stand focused as to what this community is and what it will continue to stand for. There are some very serious concerns as to how far this will actually go. For the record, be there no doubt about it, I, Roy Crozier, Jr., State Representative of District 58, hereby make it known clearly, very clearly, that I definitely oppose SFI. There were very serious efforts put forth to send a message from this community that enough is enough. There on the floor of the House of Representatives, I presented to that body, that legislative body, a House concurrent resolution, a proposal at that time, taking opposition to such a facility coming in to this particular community. Not only was it fully discussed and a series of questions were fielded and answered, but it was a unanimous vote of consent and support and duly signed. And I hand-delivered that House concurrent resolution to the administrative hearing or the adjudicatory proceedings. It is my understanding at DEQ's office. And I placed it in the hand of the administrative law judge. And along with that, we had another copy of a resolution that came forward from the Iberville Parish Police Jury, taking opposition and taking a positive stand against such a facility coming into this particular community. Now, you're going to hear a lot of testimony tonight, and you may have already heard that on all of the technical aspects, all of what the chemicals won't do and how they won't harm you and what's so good about it. But I tell you, lives are being affected. Mindsets are being damaged. Attitudes are being developed. It's all about respect. And coincidentally, for those of you in the listening audience, coincidentally, it always happened in the underprivileged and minority communities. Something is wrong. A lot of the people, parents and grandparents and forefathers who came to this particular community many, many years ago came here with less than a nickel and a nail in their pockets. And they came here with a dream to build homesteads and a dream to raise families in a fair and equitable manner, and a dream that they could too take care and take a part in the American dream of home ownership and homestead building. But how has that been thwarted? How has that dream been damaged? Very, very negatively, just with the idea of something like this coming in. Let's physically look at this particular community. There's the Mississippi River. There are the chemical industries and then the community. And guess what? What's going to be right on the other side? A hazardous waste treatment handling facility. And guess what is it is my understanding, excuse me, that there will be a railroad track, a proposed railroad track built through the center and the heart of this particular community that will carry what? Not water, not oxygen, not air, chemicals. Chemicals. Bringing it through this community. What about the pride and the dignity and the respect that these American citizens deserve to have and keep intact? You know, what we can do as a state and what we really need to do as an organized community is to stay strong and redeliver the faith, trust, hope, and confidence in state government. This isn't a game. These are lives that we're dealing with. How would you like to have DEQ or anybody that's in favor of this particular facility coming in? How would you like to have SSI as your neighbor? And let's face it, here in the River Parish area, we all live downstream and on site. A fence cannot stop that from coming across if it so happens. Let's think about it. Let's treat people the way you want to be treated. Are we that much into business that we will ignore the opinions of the individuals that this will affect? You're talking about economic growth and prosperity, but at whose expense? Whose expense? You're talking about a corporate office, a corporate entity that will yield its profits out of state, not in state. And how many jobs will be given to local people? That's a major problem that we've been facing for quite some time in this area. Tell our children go to school and then they have to catch the first thing smoking afterwards getting out of town because we can't find local jobs for them. I'm not in favor of it. District 58 is not in favor of it. And we will fight. We will fight for our rights. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Mr. Dean Rayburn.
My name is Dean Rayburn, and I am a registered professional engineer in the state of Louisiana. I deal daily with people's waste problems in industrial plants along the river and all throughout Louisiana. One of the things that I want to say about the SFI facility is that, well, first of all, every single process and unit and plant in this up the river corridor generates waste. Every single process. Some of the waste can be reused, some of it can't be reused, okay? SFI's facility is given an alternative for the use of the waste. They're taking the waste and they're putting it into a fuel product that's going to be burnt, thereby reducing the amount of organic material to sit in our landfills or be deep well injected in your backyard. And I think it's a good concept. Now, it's up to DEQ to find out whether or not they have the financial capability of closing the facility and all that kind of garbage and dealing with the runoff. If they should have a catastrophe, they're going to have to provide adequate protection for the environment. And that's what DEQ's job is, to make sure that they do that. Okay, but the fuel blending process is a way for you to take waste that's not usable in any other place. You're not going to deep well inject it. That's going into your groundwater, okay? Or could eventually, if you, unless you believe all these groundwater modeling things. And then, you know, it's not going to be landfilled. It's going to be put back to use. And you're going to only have a small amount of stuff to get rid of at the cement counts. So I think it's a good program, and that's all I have to say.
All right. The next speaker is Senator Tom Green.
I want to start by saying it's a privilege to be here. I'm encouraged by the number of people that are here. I want to set the record straight. I want to go through some facts. And when I go through the facts, it's going to be obvious, so obvious you won't have to be a rocket scientist to understand, just a little tiny bit of common sense, that this is the most asinine idea in the entire world. First off, let me tell you that what the previous speaker just said is correct. This is an admirable approach to recycle. This is the worst place you could possibly attempt it. This is the worst state that you could possibly attempt it. We're the dumping ground of the United States of America. This last year, I authored a bill, Senate Bill 959, that we passed overwhelmingly through the Senate, not one dissenting vote. We had over 88 or 89 votes in the House, that we would stop the importation of not hazardous waste. We couldn't do that, too much resistance, but at least commercial and municipal waste. The governor, in his great wisdom, decided to veto that bill. So we now have our gates open to being the dumping ground, and we have the lowest tipping fee of any state in the nation to dump garbage. But now we're going to deal with hazardous waste. Let me tell you the facts. EPA, and I appreciate EPA being represented here, with the Federal Clean Air Act, we have a 6-parish area that is in non-compliance. Iberville, Livingston, East and West Baton Rouge, Point Coupee. And in that 6-parish area, last year, they tried to require every vehicle, Ascension is in there as well, every vehicle to be tested every other year and pay $25 to $35 to have your vehicle tested so that we could meet the requirements that EPA requires for us to clean our air up. We're in non-compliance with ozone, which is not emitted, but in the presence of hydrocarbons and nitric oxides with ultraviolet light and weather conditions, we're exceeding ozone capacity. In the early 80s and late 70s, we had as many 25 days a year that we exceeded their requirement. We've lowered that down to last year, we only had 5 days. And they're still wanting to test every vehicle in the 6-parish area. I asked them to supply me the raw data on where the violations were. You know last year's violations, how many we had in the whole 6-parish area? 5. We had 1 in New Roads, 1 in Port Allen, 1 at the state capitol. You're allowed 1 a year. There's only 1 area in the entire state that was in non-compliance last year. That area is Carville, St. Gabriel. It had 2 days. We're almost where EPA wants us to be. I tried to amend that bill saying you will not test the cars, you will not implement the program. This year, the bill that passed, the governor signed it, is every one of us that registers a car each year will pay $5 more every year to fund the program to have everybody in East Baton Rouge test their cars every other year. And people that test these cars tell me, and told us in Senate committee, it will not bring us into compliance. The vehicular component, do y'all have a big traffic jam out here in Carville and St. Gabriel? Testing cars isn't going to help you. I got a letter from General Pontet, DOTD, yesterday. Because of EPA standards, our federally funded programs, any money that we get, we can't add another lane to interstate. We can't add another lane to any road without studying it to see if it's going to make the ozone go up. Yet this company wants to cite something where it's going to be bringing 18-wheelers, trains, and barges into an area that is the worst area for ozone in the state of Louisiana. So if you want to talk about NIMBY, not in my backyard, and they anticipate local resistance. Nobody wants it next to them. This is more than NIMBY. This affects the entire 6-parish area. If we don't come into compliance with ozone and maintain that, we're going to have to test our cars from now to eternity to try to come in. Does it take a lot of common sense to realize this is the worst place in the state of Louisiana to site a facility like this? Now, they can say they're not going to emit ozone, but nothing does. It's hydrocarbons and nitric oxides. What we're going to do is penalize everybody in that 6-parish area. The most frequent request I get is jobs. Now, we talk about 30, 40, 50 jobs at a facility like this. I've talked to companies across the United States through this summer with economic development. They say they don't even consider siting a facility in an area that is in non-attainment. So we're stifling our economic development and the creation of jobs by putting a facility like this in a place like this. Is that clear to everybody? How can not be clear to DEQ? I know I got a lot more satisfaction working with EPA than with DEQ this last year. I'm hoping that we can join together, and if we have to bypass the cotton picking DEQ or whatnot, let's let EPA help us to make the common sense decision that has to be made that an infant could almost understand. This thing not only shouldn't be here, it just can't be here. I've met with Governor Edwards. He agrees that possibly we ought to drag our feet so that we don't have to implement the testing of the vehicles. Evidently, maybe they were too hasty. Well, that's after the fact. But we need to send a strong message to Governor Edwards that this doesn't just affect the people who have land next to this site. This doesn't just affect Iberville Parish, Carville, St. Gabriel. This affects the greater Baton Rouge area. It can affect the economic development of this state. We have got to be united and convicted and motivated, and meetings like this are what we need. And if we need to go marching to the Capitol, I was out of state when that occurred again, let's do it again, but let's get Baton Rouge and the greater Baton Rouge area involved, okay? I am in vehement opposition to this. I have had 2 instances with DEQ where the governor said that he vetoed the bill because Kai Midbo advised him to. They pushed a program that was unnecessary and is not going to accomplish anything and is going to disenfranchise a lot of poor from even driving vehicles because DEQ insisted upon it rather than trying to work with EPA. Strike 2. I'm just stating the fact that if this site is permitted, strike 3. I'm a kick butt and take names later. And you've only got an administration for a couple more years to protect you. So if you need Senate confirmation, you better move. Thank you.
All right, everyone take a seat. Sit down, take a seat. We're going to call for the next person. That's enough. All right, the next speaker is, quiet please. It's time for the next speaker to come up. The next speaker is Sandra Learson.
Hello, my name is Sandra Learson, and I would like to speak in favor of the proposed SFI facility. I am a freelance writer and editor and have worked with Tech & Associates in submitting this permit application. As I see it, SFI will serve a continuous and important need in our community. It's economic and it does affect more than just this point, as the Senator has just said, but I think it will affect it in a way that will be beneficial in a very long run. As I see it,
Please speak up.
all right. SFI will service a continuous and important need in our communities, operating as a legally regulated acceptor, if I can use that word, of usable but otherwise unwanted wastes that are now being placed in regional landfills and incinerators. SFI will use proven technology to create fuels for a limited number and type of wastes that will be useful to someone else in another state. Also, it is my understanding that the cement kiln process destroys these wastes much more effectively than they might be destroyed in conventional industrial incinerators as we have in Louisiana. Like it or not, the hazardous waste generated in this state won't just go away by themselves. If we fight the building of plants such as SFI that will offer new options for handling even the limited number of total hazardous waste types that we already produce here, what will we have actually done to protect our environment? I think we must carefully consider our options for taking responsibilities for our wastes. I would agree that almost all of us react negatively to the words hazardous waste. Most of us don't like talking about sewage either. They're not pretty topics. They make us uncomfortable. But finding acceptable methods for dealing with hazardous waste concerns all of us. And we will probably be even more crucial for our children and our grandchildren's children. From my understanding of this project, we have an opportunity here to take positive steps in this direction with a plant that I believe will be safe. How many of you know that SFI even plans to build more containment than is currently required either by the state or federal regulations? I would just like for the people here to consider the potential benefits and the very real long-term benefits for our environment this type of facility might offer without all the scare tactics thrown in. Which brings me to another topic I would like to address, namely the recent printed and televised editorial advertisements by SFI's political and environmental opponents. SFI's opposition is running a very expensive and often misleading campaign. I say misleading because I'm familiar with the actual contents of SFI's permit application and with their officially stated positions, which are printed there. The creators of these ads are pretty shrewd in their word choices and in the way they choose to crop their maps and in the references to unnamed reports and experts. I'm specifically referring to some ads by Nan and Lean and others in current monthly publications distributed locally and statewide. Their open letter to the governor document contains some very questionable statements. It said that this state annually imports 125 million pounds of hazardous waste and that SFI's throughput of 6 million pounds would be a drastic and unnecessary increase in Louisiana's total annual import. But I must correct this implication first by pointing out that the permit application states repeatedly that SFI intends to blend waste generated in Louisiana with the bulk of these wastes coming from the southern portion of this state. Secondly, I'd like to state by stating that the 600 million pound throughput figure would be possible only if they operated daily at maximum capacity using tank storage and everything that's for construction in an indeterminate future. The lean ad in the political review stated, quote, with SFI able to expand on up to 1,000 adjacent acres, other communities also face the prospect of legal toxic discharges. The fact is that SFI doesn't own 1,000 acres adjacent to the proposed plant, and secondly, I question the logic of equating ownership with endangering communities, and also the statement implies that SFI can expand on a whim, when in fact, SFI cannot expand or modify the plans as proposed unless it first receives approval on state and federal levels and presents the issue to public hearings such as this one. The statement additionally implies that SFI will be responsible for practically conspiring with the government to release toxics on unsuspecting communities. And has anyone actually considered that legal discharges are what water permits and regulations are about in the first place? This same misleading article also ran in the heart of Baton Rouge, and it wasn't even identified as an advertisement. One needs to ask oneself about the truth here. Unfortunately, a lot of people believe everything they see in print. and I doubt many people will go to the extra effort to check the statements in the permit application. One other thing they mentioned was that SFI could ruin 13,000 acres of swampland by carelessness if there was backwater flooding situation. I think it's unlikely. First of all, SFI will use no pits, open landforms, or any other land options whatsoever. An interesting safety feature that no one seems to have noticed is the inclusion of a dedicated tank on site, which will be left empty to handle emergencies from either SFI or a marine vessel on the river or anyone else if it might be needed. Considering what it must cost to build a 1 million+ gallon tank just to leave it empty in case of emergencies does not sound like a promise that would be made by a company intending to be careless with its discharges. In conclusion, I think the concept of this facility is very forward-thinking and positive for the future of our environment and especially for guarding our water supply. This state and its people need to continuously seek solutions to reduce and manage the waste being produced here that impact the quality of all of our lives. SFI will serve a useful niche in solving some of the hazardous waste handling issues that we face. It clearly can't solve all of our problems, but I see SFI as a positive step in creating a safe and useful means to keep more hazardous waste from being landfilled or incinerated. Our Earth is a delicate system which we must safeguard. I think we all agree to that. And the decisions we make today will affect the others who follow. I could not have worked on this permit if I believed it would be unsafe or harmful, and if I believed that the owners did not intend to operate their plant in an ethical and legal manner. I also enjoy the natural beauty of this state, and I also have canoed Bayou Bro and Alligator Bayou with the Sierra Club. I could not in good conscience support a facility that I thought would pose major risks to the people or the environment here. Thank you all for your time.
All right, the next speaker is Mr. R. Charles Ellis. Yes, sir. All right, calm down. I will, excuse me. I'm going to give this gentleman a moment to make a request. Okay, no, sir. Sit down and don't disrupt the hearing. I will ask them to give their address. That's no problem. Mr. Ellis is to speak next.
Ms. Lyes, if I may, I'm going to allow Mr. Eames of the NAACP to take my speaking spot, and I will take a spot after everyone else who has already signed up to speak.
Everyone be quiet. Let me just address this. All right, Mr. Ellis, has he registered?
Have you signed up, Mr. Eames?
He signed up, and if I am going to ask you, when you state your name, to go ahead and state your address. Thank you.
My name is G. Washington Eames. I'm president of Baton Rouge Branch NAACP. I live at 6813 Bradley Avenue, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, zip 70805. This, in a lot of ways, reminds me of three drunks. One was on the bench asleep, and two showed up. And they were arguing about whether or not it was the moon or the sun. So they happened to wake up the other drunk. And he said, "Man, what you woke me up for?" He said, "We were trying to find out whether or not this is the moon or the sun." Man, I don't even live in this neighborhood. And I think this is a problem that you have here. Most of the persons that's coming to speak for this particular proposal don't live in this neighborhood. And the reason that I'm here is that I was invited by this organization. I got to get it right now. It's called Neighborhood Assisting Neighbors. Now what they're asking the NAACP to do And if you know our track record nationwide in taking on anything that violates anybody's civil rights, and we're the most feared, most respected civil rights organization on earth. And if you catch our track record, we always win. You may detain us with some mumbo jumbo, but in the final analysis, we win. And what we want to get from you tonight is a commitment to file a petition with the NAACP, Baton Rouge branch, that we will ask the national office and all of his lawyers with all his expertise in environmental genocide, because that's what it is. These people would not put this in Beverly Hills. They would not put this in some of the other high rent and high class areas that I've been in Dallas. They would not put this in what they call, wherever the University of Dallas Cowboys is located. I think they call that, wait a minute. I can't think of the name of the place now. But anyway, they would not put it there. So the only thing that we want you to do is file a petition with this young man right here for him to bring it to the national office of the NAACP in Baton Rouge. And we will get the lawyers with the expertise that specialize, like I said before, in environmental genocides to defend you. Because you need to go all the way to the Supreme Court to stop Louisiana from using certain areas in this state to maintain certain things for rich people. And that's all I want you to do. If you ask us for our assistance, we will give it to you. Thank you very much.
All right, the next speaker, Mr. Greg Wright. Mr. Greg Wright.
Seemed to take long. I didn't need to do that. You don't have to set your watch.
Give your name and address, sir, please.
I'm Greg Wright. I live at 2355 Highway 75 in St. Gabriel.
They can't hear you, sir. Would you please speak into the mic? Thank you.
I just think it's time that we grab the bull by the horns and clean up our own mess instead of leaving it for our children and our grandchildren. I think the SFI facility will help do that, and I think it's a good thing instead of us burying it or injecting it and leaving it for our children and our grandchildren to clean up. And that's really all I have to say.
All right, sir. All right, the next speaker is Mr. Kevin Lamarck.
My name is Kevin Lemaire. I live at 8235 South Essen Heights Court,
Thank you.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana. First, I would like to acknowledge that I respect your authority here as being in control of the hearing. However, when people are clapping or applauding or booing, I think that's the public speaking at a public hearing. And for whatever reason, they don't come up here to speak, whether they can't because of time constraints or whatever. That's part of the public record, I think. I just wanted to say
But I acknowledge your comment, sir.
Thank you. I've heard the proponents come up here and talk about how good this site is and how innovative and what it's going to do for the state and going to send all this waste out of the state. What I don't understand is why do they have to locate in this state if they're going to send everything out of the state? Why don't they locate where they have their customers? Since they're not going to sell anything to anybody in Louisiana, why don't you take your site, put it next to the kiln you're going to sell to, and bring your waste there, so you don't have to double handle it by bringing it in and then shipping it out again. With regard to the permits and the applications, The notice for tonight's hearing boldly states that a wide variety of air toxic pollutants will be emitted from the facility, primarily from fugitives and a flare. It appears to me that a true state-of-the-art facility would be a facility that would eliminate all emissions and/or capture and reuse them. If there are volatile emissions from this facility, and according to the proposed limits, there will be approximately 5.5 tons per year emitted just on VOCs. That means quite literally profits for this company are disappearing into the air. If the wastes are allowed to volatilize, then some of the BTU value of the waste is lost. If the principals of this facility are so experienced with this type of operation, and the facility is so advanced in design, why are there any emissions? I have not reviewed the permit. However, there certainly will be additional source points for emissions not anticipated in the application or permit. And those source points will be the dramatically increased emissions from the much greater truck traffic into and out of this facility. Not only will the transit of these trucks cause increased deterioration of the ambient air quality, their presence at the facility will also contribute through their idling engines while they wait to load and unload, as well as the engines of self-contained transfer pumps located on the trucks. Further increased marine traffic will provide additional air pollutants. These sources should have been included in the permit application and therefore in the permit. On the CO and the VOC limits, first, they're estimated, and again, a true state-of-the-art facility operated by individuals who hold themselves out as having tremendous experience and expertise should not have to guess an average of what their emissions are going to be, nor should they force the people who will be forced to breathe these pollutants to guess. The CO limit for this facility is estimated at a little more than 2.5 tons per year. Marine shale processors, a facility which is very similar to the type of facility proposed by SFI, minus the kiln, they have a facility that has, or is going to be, I think, typical of the clients that SFI will have, in that they have a kiln and they burn hazardous waste for fuel. They have a limit on their permit for kiln number 5 of only 0.22 tons per year. The SFI facility will emit approximately 100 times the amount of the same pollutant as MSP is permitted. While some say MSP emits much more than 0.22 tons per year for their entire operation, it's my recollection that not all of those emissions from MSP are permitted and are subject to various enforcement actions. Believe me, I'm in no way endorsing the operations of marine shale. I use the marine shale analogy only because it's of its similarity to the facility with regard to fuels and waste streams. The VOC limits for this facility is estimated at 5.5 tons per year, while MSP permit only allows 0.44 tons per year. I have the same argument about this limit as I just made. It's more than 100 times greater than the limits imposed upon the stack emissions of the now second most controversial facility in this state. With regard to the specifications for fuels proposed by SFI, the proposed liquid fuels, dry solid fuels, and blended sludge fuels to be generated by SFI are incredibly high in metal concentrations. As a point of illustration, the liquid fuels will have a typical concentration of 1,000 parts per million lead with a potential high concentration of 4,000 parts per million. The dry solid fuels will have a typical concentration of 500 ppm lead with a potential high concentration again of 4,000 parts per million. According to the recyclable materials analysis plan submitted by marine shale processors, they burn liquid waste and fuels with lead concentrations up to 500 parts per million, or half of a typical waste stream that's going to be developed by this facility, and solid waste and fuels with lead concentration only as high as 50 parts per million. MSP would not burn under their permit, nor could they burn the fuels proposed by SFI. Of course, MSP would not burn the SFI's fuels for another simple reason, that being that they're in the business of charging for burning waste, not buying them. Another point of concern is the fact that SFI fuels will be used by kilns that create cement. The heavy metals concentrations, among other things, make the fuels proposed by SFI hazardous by definition. These heavy metals will not be destroyed or decreased in concentration by their use as fuels. The resultant ash from the burning of these fuels will no doubt be hazardous, as well as the air emissions from the kilns. It's unbelievable that someone could be permitted to blend these types of hazardous waste fuels for use in poorly regulated furnaces and kilns. It appears the underlying motive of this scheme is to dispose of otherwise useless wastes in a fashion which is less expensive and less stringent. While the DEQ and EPA do not permit comparisons of one facility to another, it's almost impossible to ignore the enforcement efforts, concern, and discontent exhibited by these agencies with regard to MSP, a facility so closely related in operations to the proposed SFI facility. The only difference between this proposed facility and MSP is that SFI doesn't have a kiln. If this permit is granted and SFI can't sell fuels, which is a possibility recognized by their own permit application, I hope they don't apply for a modification to the permit to include a kiln. Thank you.
right. I'm going to remind you once again that I would appreciate no outbursts from the audience. I will clear the hearing room. You will stand outside, and I will call you up to the podium one at a time. I do this because we're going to conduct this hearing in an orderly manner. The next speaker is Mr. Tom Macy.
I'm H.T. Massey. I reside at 4835 Point Clara Road. I am Vice President and Operations Manager of Nordex Inc., Nordex of Louisiana, at 4735 Point Clara Road. We acquired this land in 1978. The land was for sale. We purchased it on account of the water. It had deep water, and we intended to put a berth there. I'm speaking tonight. I asked to speak tonight because of a letter I received at the post office from an organization called Neighbors Assisting Neighbors. The newsletter stated that Nordex had a shaky track record. I begged to differ with them. In 1982, the Department of Natural Resources did not order Nordex to clean up a site at Sunshine. We had leased a 3-acre tract of land to MK Fuels at the back of some property Nordex owned, which is now Petro United. We went in and cleaned the property up and took care of it in a proper manner. Mr. James H. Brent from the Natural Resources sent us a letter November the 1st, 1983. So reads, L.G. Hansen, President, Nordex, Inc. Dear Mr. Hansen, the test results submitted to your letter of October 17, 1983 has been reviewed. This review indicates that the cleanup operation was successful. The site is now felt to be of a non-hazard nature and would not be subject to the rules and regulation of hazardous waste program. I would like to express my appreciation for the professional manner in which your firm approached the cleanup of the site. If this office can be of assistance in the future, feel free to contact James H. Brent. The second allegation was that we were invited with Bayou Sorrel. Yes, that was operated by Claw. Claw was a company that promoted to inject material into wells. Nordex had cleaned a tank. We had 3,000 gallons of tank bottoms. We contacted them, paid them to dispose of it. They didn't dispose of it. It came back to haunt, as it did other industries here. Nordex's insurance company paid a portion of the cleanup. Dutchtown was another site that was mentioned, and Nordex was cleared of all involvement in it. And the other one was the combustion fuels Superfund site, and we're unfamiliar with it. We have never done business with it in any way, shape, or form. We've had one spill in the 19 years that I've been operation manager for Nordex. That was at the present site we're at. We had less than 5 gallons of number 6 fuel oil that was spilled. It was cleaned up in accordance with DEQ. Everything was handled through the soil was hauled off, it was refilled and taken care of. In the 19 years that I've been with Nordex, this is the only upset that we have had, and I feel it's a good work record instead of a shaky record. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right, the next speaker is Mr. Thomas A. Pierce. Mr. Pierce, would you state your name and address for the record? And also, I've been requested to announce who the next two speakers would be in the order that I will call them in order for everyone to be ready to expedite the hearing. So after Mr. Pierce, Ms. Cindy Foreman will be called, and then Mr. Steve Irving. Go on, sir. Name and address. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Thomas Pierce. I live in Donaldsonville, Louisiana, at 406 Lee Avenue. I just want to tell the people in Riverville Parish that you are sitting on a time bomb. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, and also you don't want to reinvent an environmental disaster. As you know, or have you heard of, in Ascension Parish, we have 3 Superfund sites: Dutchtown, Cleve Reba, and Old Inga. Please be against SFI. I voted against IT when they came to Ascension Parish to try to put a hazardous waste site there. We won that battle, so you can win this battle. You might think that the federal government would want to maybe spend money on roads and drainage and maybe even hurricane relief instead of another Superfund site to try to clean up another Superfund site. In Ascension Parish, as in Iberville Parish, East Baton Rouge, and the surrounding areas in the state of Louisiana, we have a beautiful state of Louisiana. And with your help and strength and in numbers, we're going to continue to have a beautiful Louisiana. You must give every effort to fight something like this as a hazardous waste site. I don't want to keep it too long. I just want to let you know that in Ascension Parish recently, all 11 police jurors voted unanimously against SFI. We want to protect our streams, we want to protect our wildlife, and we want to protect our families, just like you do in Iberville Parish and East Baton Rouge Parish and the surrounding areas. You know, the progress we've done environmentally yesterday, the progress we're doing today, and hopefully the environmental decisions we make tomorrow will affect our families and children in a safe, positive manner. I just want to say that in IT, we defeated IT, along with several groups that represented us environmentally in Ascension Parish, and we fought it and won, so you fight it and you win. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next speaker is Ms. Cindy Foreman.
I am Cindy Foreman. I live in Germantown, Tennessee, and I'm here this evening to give you some information on this facility. I have a degree in fitness and wellness and have been involved in health-related fields for many years. I have an extensive background in scientific and medical research, having worked with several doctors as a laboratory assistant. I've handled potentially toxic and hazardous materials on a daily basis for long periods of time and had suffered no health problems as a result of my work. Due to my background in the health field, I was approached to help in the compilation of this permit. The idea was very interesting to me because it allowed me to utilize my interest in improving not only human health, but also the health of the environment. In my mind, they go hand in hand. As I read the permit, and I have read every word of it more than once, and became familiar with the technology that Supplemental Fuels is proposing to implement at the facility, I became convinced that the state-of-the-art facility would very well be the solution to a very bad problem. When built according to stringent guidelines and conditions dictated and enforced by EPA and DEQ, SFI will be a state-of-the-art waste recycling facility. Previously useless waste materials that for years have been allowed to accumulate in landfills, in dumps, or were injected into the ground will now be collected and processed into an acceptable form and blended with other materials to form a usable fuel. The product can then be shipped out of state to suitable clients. This allows for the destruction of tons of waste materials that would otherwise have to accumulate and continue to add to the already monumental problem of waste disposal. SFI will supply a much-needed service to the state of Louisiana as it collects hazardous waste materials and removes them from the state for destruction. A facility such as this should be embraced by the public as a very positive step toward solving a very negative problem. Modern technology, used wisely, can greatly enhance the quality of life for all of us. We are all concerned about the environment and should strive to support and encourage any endeavors that will help to clean up the mess that mankind has willfully and blindly made in the wake of its rapid rise into the technological age. In our quest for a better life, we consumers have produced massive quantities of waste products that cannot now be effectively put to use. SFI can change that. We are all familiar with the concept of recycling. We collect our cans, bottles, newspapers, and plastic containers and send them out to be reprocessed into usable items. Recycling is a concept that developed from a need to find alternative methods of waste disposal. SFI is a valuable advancement in the recycling process. Because of the technology involved, SFI will be able to recycle many materials for which there currently are no desirable disposal options. Unwanted byproducts of everyday life, such as the plastic containers used in the supply of motor oils, household detergents and cleaning solvents, the residues of paints, spot-removing solvents, used motor oils, and similar products, along with the waste generated by the dry cleaning industry, service stations, petrochemical refining industries, and chemical production industries, would all be candidates for fuel production by SFI. By taking these wastes and blending them into a usable fuel for shipment to out-of-state clients, where they can be safely and totally destroyed, SFI is making it possible to rid the area of these wastes instead of having them forced onto the environment and compounding an already monumental problem. We don't live in a sterile world. Every day we're exposed to potentially hazardous and toxic materials that we take for granted as a part of our lives. Just because material has the potential to be hazardous or toxic doesn't mean it will be. When handled safely, these same materials pose little, if any, threat to the health of the people exposed to them. For example, vitamins have always been a very important part of my life. I know they can improve my health and well-being if taken correctly. However, if taken in wrong combinations or dosages, even vitamins can be toxic. Gasoline is another example. We all depend on it to fuel our vehicles and make our everyday life much better, but if not handled properly, gasoline can be deadly. We are all guilty of generating hazardous waste in our normal daily tasks. Every time you change the oil in your car, you generate a hazardous waste. Every time you paint your house, you generate a hazardous waste. Every time you use a cleaning solvent, you generate a hazardous waste. It's a fact of life that we live with hazardous and potentially toxic materials around us all the time. Instead of focusing energy on how, why, or when they might cause a major threat to us, and by the way, they already do, we should all be focusing on trying to develop and support innovative new ways of doing away with this blight on the environment. It's easy to say, I don't want this in my backyard, but your backyard might very well be harmful to you. It's not so easy to say, I see the problem and I want to help improve it. Instead of fighting supplemental fuels, you should welcome them and work with them to get hazardous material out of Louisiana where it will be destroyed. This monumental task must be done safely to succeed and must be very closely monitored, which it will be by the government agencies involved. The owners of the facility have made every effort to incorporate the most advanced technology available in the fields of recycling and fuels blending to make this facility the most advanced state-of-the-art facility possible. Much research has gone into the development of this site to ensure that all possible safeguards to human health and the environment have been incorporated. Materials accepted into the facility will come only from approved generators and will be transported exclusively by transporters who are approved and licensed to handle hazardous materials. Materials will be extensively tested and retested before they are accepted by the facility. Any material not meeting the required standards will be refused and immediately returned to the generator. While on site, they will be tracked by a computer system so that the status of any material received onto the site will be readily available at all times. This will alleviate the possibility of samples or materials being incorrectly handled or processed. All samples and materials accepted for processing will be received in secured containers and will be kept segregated by their composition to alleviate the possibility of accidental mixing during storage. All materials will be constantly monitored and inspected to ensure the integrity of their containers. Any problems will be corrected immediately, and the status of all materials will constantly be recorded and updated in the computer tracking system. The plant itself is designed for maximum safety for its employees as well as the surrounding community and the environment. Sophisticated alarms and shutdown systems have been designed into the facility to ensure problems will be detected at the earliest possible moment and corrected immediately or rerouted for safety. Multiple containment systems will prevent the release of materials during unloading, storage, processing, blending, or loading to any soil, surface water, or air environment. In addition to the facility itself being as safe as possible, every employee will be required to undergo extensive training in the proper methods of handling the products and processes that SFI will utilize. This is extremely important to the efficient operation of the facilities. Employees will be thoroughly familiar with all products that could potentially be accepted. They will be schooled in emergency procedures as well as the day-to-day reporting procedures they will be required to use. In addition to in-house training, SFI will hold seminars with the various area hospital and emergency facilities and organizations so that in the event that there is a problem of any kind, it will be handled in the most efficient manner possible. Working very closely with the community and emergency response organizations will help to minimize any negative impact a potential problem could have on the surrounding area. Security at the site is designed to be very efficiently and closely monitored. Processes and equipment will be continuously monitored by remote cameras and will undergo daily inspections. Personnel will be governed by strict guidelines and procedures and will be routinely tested and updated on current requirements. The avoidance of accidents or situations that would endanger human health or the environment is a major concern of SFI. Every available resource will be utilized to ensure the safety of all who are involved in the project as well as the community. By following strict design standards and guidelines in the development of the site, utilizing significant containment and recovery processes, employing highly skilled and continuously trained personnel, implementing strict security procedures, and working closely with the community to ensure that any problem will be handled efficiently, SFI intends to become a valuable, functioning, contributing member of the surrounding community. It is SFI's intent to help clean up the environment and enhance the area, not destroy it. You should welcome SFI because the alternatives for the future of the environment are scary.
All right, the next speaker is Mr. Steve Irving. No. Sit. All right. I'm going to take a 20-minute break, and when I come back, I'm sorry, Mr. Irving, we're going to take a 20-minute break, and then we'll come back and resume the hearing. Thank you.
I object. Look, while she's taking a break, let me tell y'all a few things. All right? And I'm going to put this in the record. She can turn the microphone off.
We are now going to clear the hearing room, and we will call you in one at a time. Officers, clear them out. All right, well then, gentlemen and ladies, sit down, take a seat. We are taking a 20-minute break, and we will resume the hearing. I can start a break. This is a break. You cannot do that. 20-minute break. You cannot do that.
I was the fourth speaker to show up here to sign up today. to the public, it makes it look like you've got...
I gotta get orders.
Okay, let me have your attention just for 1 minute. As you know, for you that don't know me, I'm Freddie Petrie, and I'm the sheriff of Viewville Parish, and I'm in disagreement with the lady. I think this is a public meeting. But I'm gonna tell her. So I'm gonna handle it. Let me have your attention. Let me have your attention. But I think for this meeting to get on, although I disagree with her, I think for this meeting to get on, we should have some little order, because if not, we could be here till 12 o'clock tonight and we're not going to accomplish anything. I would appreciate you giving us, giving the people here the undivided attention so we can get this meeting and get it over with. If this way, we're not going to accomplish anything. And I think if we stay here tonight, we're united, and I think we're going to win.
All right, everyone take a seat. Deputies, come in. Deputies, come in. Everyone have a seat. Everyone have a seat and resume order. The sheriff's office and the state police will clear the hearing room. Now sit down and be quiet. We're going to call you one at a time. Clear the room. Clear the room up.
Think I'll be arrested? I don't want to be arrested. I don't want to be arrested. Bring it over there. Just hang over.
I don't think they do. I suggest you get to the break. I said a 20-minute break. 20-minute break. 20-minute break. Okay. Go talk to them. Yeah, and then you'll be put on the list to talk.
Yeah, I'll bring it to you.
I suggest you go talk to them, gentlemen. Y'all need to go talk. Okay, good. Go on.
I got it off, Mike.
But we're going in order of 1 and 1 and 1. They're upset because I'm going 1, 1 and 1. They think it should be all the interviewers first, and then that's what I was.
Just want to ask you a couple of questions.
Wait, I'm in a few minutes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Come on, give us some room. It's a public hearing. It's a public hearing. She's going to answer your questions. Just give us some room.
Hey, Ref. What you're doing is illegal.
I believe I'm not a lawyer. I really truly believe that. And she should, if anybody should be put out of here, it should be her, not us. Because I think she's been impartial from the beginning, because she's even told our police jurymen that we should want this in the community. She's not a salesperson for industry. She represents us, the people. As far as I'm concerned, we're not the culprits here. We shouldn't be put out. She should.
That's a good deal. Let me ask Warren something. Hey, what do you think?
Well, I'm not over here for both. I'm here for the interest of the people.
Yeah, I got you on camera, so we
definitely No, it's a public hearing. I'm not cleaning anybody out. I think she's going to cover.
Right on, you're my mic man.
I'm not asking anyone to leave now. If it be an altercation, a fight, or something, then I'll question to get them out of here. As long as they're expressing their opinion, and booing, and the opposed, and cheering them up. I see the President of the United States talking. They applaud him, and they don't tell him you got to leave the room. I'm taking a break. We want to speak tomorrow. I think she's all wet. I really do.
Thank you, Freddie.
That's my feeling.
Votes here, too.
I also gave permission for the Reverend to speak.
All right.
Okay.
Let me check
Go
that
check
out.
with her.
She's ready to go whenever you are.
Okay.
Okay. Can we have quiet? Can we have quiet, please? Can we turn it on? Thank you.
Please don't hold it too close to your mouth.
We won't.
Let me have your attention, please. Let me have your attention, please. Will everyone be seated?
Gonna switch it?
DEQ is ready to resume. Will you please give them your undivided attention? Okay, we hope that peace and calm can prevail. Whatever you do, let it be in moderation, please. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, have a seat. The next speaker's coming on. I merely took a break to get something to drink. Now, the next speaker is going to present his name and address, and after the two next speakers will be Wayne Broussard and Warren Berthelot. Mr. Steve Irving.
My name is Steve Irving, 18541 Bay Ridge Court, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm here. I represent the Wildlife Refuge, so my clients are furry and have feathers and can't be here to speak for themselves, so I'm here to talk for them. I don't know who paid for the lab girl from Tennessee to come down here and talk to you and read the permit application, but and we certainly are not allowed to ask the question. However, if you aren't being paid, and if you have no financial interest in this permit, when you come up to the microphone from now on, why don't you say so? And then when the people come up and they don't say anything about it, you're going to know they're the ones. Now, frankly, the situation here is a little bit strange. As I told y'all off the record before I was cut off during the break, I was the fourth speaker to sign up tonight. Everybody that was ahead of me, there was the guy from the Louisiana Geological Survey and three other opponents. The deck got shuffled here somewhere, because as you see, they're starting to intersperse proponents and opponents. Now, the funny thing about it is, I refused to tell them which side I was on because I knew they were going to try to do something like that. So somebody decided that for me anyway, you see, because they put me in an opponent slot. I don't think they have any right to do that. That has not been done in the past. It does not give the record a fair, objective view of what the opposition is really like. It makes it look like this is a 50-50 opponents deal. And frankly, when you have half the people coming up here to read out of the permit application to you, which is really what's going on, then, you know, that's 10 minutes, and then you got another one, and then you got another 10 minutes. There are a lot of you that aren't being paid to be here. You don't have any financial interest in this. You'd like to come here and talk, but you're not going to be able to wait around long enough to get a chance if I'm the fourth person to sign up. Now, letting public officials go ahead is normal. That's okay. But when it comes to the citizenry who come to talk, they ought to be allowed to talk in the order in which they come, and not in the order in which the bureaucracy thinks they ought to be able to talk, which is what's going on here. Now, I'd like to point out some other things. Some of this is kind of legal technical stuff, but it really, I think, is important. We asked this to be an adjudicatory hearing tonight, which would mean we get a chance to subpoena witnesses and cross-examine people. We had some questions for some people. You know, tonight you don't get to ask any questions, but we wanted a chance to ask some questions. They denied that. I think their denial is wrong, and I think you're going to get a chance to talk, because I think they're going to wind up having to come back here to do this again when we appeal it, and so you're going to get another hearing at which you'll get a chance to talk. And at that point in time, maybe the deck won't get shuffled. Now, you know, this permit has been handled very strangely. All right, the permit application was accepted for review at some point without telling anybody. It was only months later that anybody found out it was there. I think on April the 2nd, they finally run an ad in the newspaper to tell you about it. The only problem is that the ad was run in the Gonzales newspaper. Sometime between April 2nd and May 13th, somebody at DEQ figured out that St. Gabriel was at Iberville Parish instead of Ascension. And so then they had to rerun it in Iberville Parish. The only problem was that when they ran it in Iberville Parish, they couldn't figure out when and where they were going to hold the hearing, so they didn't put it in the notice. And it would have been really hard to get there because it didn't tell you where to go or what to do or even when to be there, and not even what day to be there. You couldn't have been really ready for it, though, because they held the hearing, I think, 6 days later. And that hearing, by the way, was in Baton Rouge, and I think that was illegal, too. I think that hearing had to be in this community, and we're going to find out about that. Now, there are a lot of technical problems with this proposal. You're not going to find anything in the permit application about the on-site geology. You know, take some borings on-site, find out what the soil is like. You're not going to find that because they didn't do it. In the permit application, they do have some geology information. You know, there are some soil borings that were there. Now, the little heading at the top of it to tell you where it was taken and who it was taken for was obliterated, so you couldn't tell where it come from. But somebody did eventually figure out that it was at a site 6 miles away instead of this one. You know, totally different kind of soil and everything else. Now, I don't know how that document got in there, but it certainly was not representative of what it was supposed to be. Now, SFI, at least SFI's affiliated company, Nordics, and it's kind of hard to figure out how they're affiliated. You know, Nordics isn't exactly one entity. There's a Nordics, and then there's a Nordics, and then there's another Nordics, or there's what used to be a Nordics. They started out as a Nordics, and then it changed its name, and they formed a new Nordics, and then they formed a Louisiana Nordics and a Delaware Nordics. And, man, you can't figure out which one is which. However, the Nordic site, whichever corporation it is that's next door to this one, did have some geotechnical work done by Woodward Clyde, which is a fairly respected engineering company. And some of the people who did find out in time and did manage to intervene in the first hearing that they had found out about it. And that document is very, very interesting, and it was introduced in that hearing, and I would like to be sure that it becomes a part of this record and is looked at. It was introduced as HB 20 in the original hearing. And without going into the gory details of it, this geotechnical consultant for Nordics and whatever relationship Nordics has to SFI, nobody knows, and maybe not even the people involved with Nordics and SFI know. But at any rate, in this preliminary report, they found that the soils were not suitable to build tanks on the property right next door. Now, I hate to tell you, but if the property right next door isn't a good place to build tanks, it's very, very unlikely that the property right, next door is going to be okay. They had soft spots and all kinds of, and we're talking about forming the foundation for the tanks is what we're talking about. You don't have to worry about fires or anything else. Let's talk about the foundation for the tanks, and this soil isn't adequate for that foundation. Now, that creates a problem because if the foundation isn't any good, you may get leaks, and if you may get leaks, then you may get fires, which kind of brings me to the next topic, and Mr. Lemaire made a comment about this already, but we looked at the levels of metals. People don't think much about metals, but there are some metals like lead that are very, very dangerous. They're very hazardous. And this facility proposes to generate fuel that has lead in it at like 1,000 parts per million, maybe up to 4,000 parts per million. Now, folks, that's a lot of lead. That is a very great deal of lead. And in fact, let me give you some examples. A fire with that stuff, you don't want to be there without a respirator on. How many respirators does your local fire department have? I understand they have a pumper truck. How many respirators do they have that are going to be able to handle a fuel fire with a heavy concentration of lead? Now, I haven't mentioned the chromium yet, which is also pretty bad stuff, and it's in there too at pretty high levels. The local fire department's not going to be able to handle that. And if you think that some of the other chemical plants up and down the river are going to come in here to help them put a fire out without knowing what is in here, don't bet on it. They're not going to risk their personnel coming in here. So a fire at this facility is going to be a very big hazard. It's going to be very bad. Now, all that lead and the chromium and all these metals and everything, I know they think they're going to operate a facility for 19 years and never have a spill. There ain't any facility that's been in operation for 19 years handling liquid material like this that has never had a spill or had one spill. Don't believe that. That does not happen. There isn't anybody that careful. There have been plenty of spills. Now, they may have cleaned them up, but don't believe that there hadn't been any spills. Those things spill, they're going to wind up in the water. It's going to contaminate Spanish Lake. It's going to contaminate the wildlife. It's going to contaminate the fish. It's going to contaminate the birds. And that is going to hurt those little furry critters and the ones with feathers that I represent. And I object to that. Now, I really do think that this hearing tonight is not really what this facility needs. It needs to have a full adjudicatory hearing. An adjudicatory hearing is like the one that we had in the IT case. I was the attorney for the interveners in the IT case that fought that thing for 9 years. And they drafted me to come out of retirement and work on this one. I didn't really want to do it, but enough of them come to see me, I finally said, all right, I'll do it. And I said, if you can provoke a hearing like that, I'll come in and we'll have some fun with it. And we will have some fun with this one because the IT facility was technically a light year ahead of this one. Now, for more reasons than I can count. They at least had borings, on site. They did at least find out what the soil was like. That did them in eventually, and that's probably why you don't have any in this case. But they did at least look. Now, we need to have an adjudicatory hearing where we get to call, we issue those subpoenas that we asked DEQ to issue, that they refused to issue because they didn't want to find out what we were going to find out when we asked the questions. Well, those subpoenas, those need to be issued. People need to come in. They need to answer our questions. They need to answer to us, explain what it is they're going to do. We'll take it apart. Just give us a chance. Now, you say, well, there was an adjudicatory hearing on this thing already. They already had a chance. Wrong. DEQ in that hearing said the only thing that's at issue is the completeness of the permit application. Well, guess what? They're not right about that either. But it didn't get to the technical merits. Is my time up? They didn't get to the technical merits. Neither have I tonight. This ain't the place to do it. Y'all be quiet. I've never seen anybody challenge the audience so many times so fast. She's obviously got a short fuse. Be very calm and quiet. Thank y'all.
The next speaker